Vishnu Krsna Prasna Buddha Shimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Narapase Shashanivani Paschachare Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaurabhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, chapter 63, verse 1. Shri Sukha Uvacha Apasyatam Chani Rudham Chatbandhunam Cha Bharata Chatvaravashika Masa Vyatir Anusochatam. Shri Sukha Uvacha. Sukadeva Goswami said, Apusyatam, who did not see. Cha. And Anirudham, Aniruddha taught his Bandhunam for the relatives. Cha. And Bharata, O descendant of Bharata. And Chatvara, for Varshika, of the rainy season. Masa, months. Vyatiyu, past. Anu Sochitam, who were lamenting. Sukadeva Goswami said, O descendant of Bharata, the relatives of Aniruddha not seeing him return continued to lament as the 4 rainy months passed. After hearing from Narada the news of Aniruddha's deeds and his capture, the Vrishnis, who worshipped Lord Krishna as their personal deity, went to Shonitapur. With Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna in the lead, the chiefs of the Satvata clan, Pradumna, Satyaki, Gada, Samba, Sharana, Nanda, Upananda, Bhadra, and others, converged with an army of 12 divisions and laid siege to Banasura's capital, completely surrounding the city on all sides. Banasura became filled with anger upon seeing them destroy his cities, suburban gardens, ramparts, watchtowers, and gateways, and thus he went out to confront them with an army of equal size. Lord Rudra, accompanied by his son Kartikeya, and the Pramatas came riding on Nandi, his bull carrier, to fight Balaram and Krishna on Bana's behalf. Purport, Sridhar Sridhar Swami states that the word Bhagavan is used here to indicate that Lord Shiva is by nature all-knowing, and thus well aware of Lord Krishna's greatness. Still, although Shiva knew Lord Krishna would defeat him, he joined the battle against him to demonstrate the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur states that Lord Shiva entered the battle for 2 reasons. First, to increase Lord Krishna's pleasure and enthusiasm, and second, to demonstrate that the Lord's incarnation as Krishna, although enacting human-like pastimes, is superior to other avatars, such as Lord Ramchandra. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti further states in this regard that yogamaya, Lord Krishna's internal potency, bewildered Lord Shiva, just as she had bewildered Brahma. In support of the statement, the Acharya cites the phrase Brahma Rudra Mohanam from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Of course, Yogamaya's job is to make fine arrangement for the Lord's pastimes, and thus Shiva became enthusiastic to battle the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So, here we see the beginning of the battle. The Yadus understood that through Narada Muni that Aniruddha had been captured by Banasura, so they all gathered together and began attacking that city. And included there were Krishna and Balaram. And we see that on the opposite side we have Lord Shiva, who had given benedictions to Banasura. He was his devotee, so he had given him many benedictions. So he fought on behalf of Banasura against Krishna and Balaram, which seems very strange, considering that he has all knowledge and is another form of the Supreme Lord. But we see that's not uncommon. We see other forms of the Lord may fight also. So we find Parsuram fighting, for instance, and we find other cases as well. So as explained in the purport, it's not their fault. The Supreme Lord has great power, so through his Shakti, like yogamaya, he can bewilder even Lord Shiva. So that is one of the points that this story illustrates, the greatness of Krishna over all others. And we'll find, of course, later on in the 10th canto also, we have several stories about Lord Shiva. For instance, the story of Vrikasura and how he was his benediction, Shiva's benediction to Vrikasura backfired, and Shiva fell into danger. And then there's the story of Bhrigu, who went to test Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and then ultimately they concluded that Vishnu is supreme. So, as the Bhagavatam 10th canto progresses, we see how it's indicated that Krishna is superior to both Brahma and Shiva. So this is one of the incidents that shows that. Later on there's a battle, and Krishna wins the battle against Lord Shiva. So we see the victory of Krishna here. In any case, this is all the will of the Supreme Lord for certain pastimes, so we can never blame Shiva for any of his activities and say he is in ignorance or governed by the modes of passion, etc. Because he also is a form of the Supreme Lord, so therefore he cannot fall into ignorance like ordinary jivas. That's what distinguishes the Lord from the jivas. So he's in a very special category. And of course one could say, well, still he's the Supreme Lord, so how can this happen? But the will of the Lord is such that he's more powerful than all others. And particularly Krishna is more powerful than anyone else. So he can, as we see, he bewildered Balaram. So what to speak of others like Lord Shiva or Brahma, etc. So this is the case. But the bewilderment is not for any hostile cause, inimical cause. It's rather for illustrating certain things and for giving benefit to everyone ultimately. So as explained in the purport of the course, this shows the superiority of Krishna over any other form, including the other Leela avatars and Guna avatars. And it also illustrates, of course, the idea of Krishna taking pleasure in fighting. Sometimes the Lord fights great demons, and this actually is pleasurable for the Lord. It's a display of his prowess. So we see the case of Nrsimhadev fighting Ranikasipu, again, a matter of the Lord's prowess. So the Lord takes joy in these different types of pastimes. At the same time, he doesn't hate anyone, including the demons, because when he kills them, he gives them benedictions. In this way, the Lord has his own purposes for making these types of arrangements. And of course, it also is not only illustrative for us, the power of Krishna, but it gives good instructions even to Lord Shiva and whoever else he is fighting with. Through these incidents, we find that Shiva and others realize their position in relation to the Supreme Lord, and they take no regret for being the servant of Supreme Lord. Rather, they praise the Supreme Lord for this opportunity to serve him in this way. So there is no animosity involved in these events where Shiva or others get bewildered. So the ultimate purpose of all the pastimes is to give pleasure to the devotees. Secondarily, there is another purpose, or several purposes involved in pastimes. One is to annihilate demons, because one of the purposes of Krishna coming was to get rid of the demoniac forces like Kamsa and his followers, so that the sacrifices could continue and devotees could get their worship and share of the sacrifice. So that's a secondary reason. So the primary reason is to give joy to the devotees, and through that the Lord himself experiences the highest bliss. So the essential nature of the Lord is bliss, and that becomes expressed through various types of pastimes. However, bliss is not static. It is not a stationary type of experience. It takes place through various events, a series of experiences, and particularly a series of experiences with other persons. So this produces lila, or pastime. The Lord interacts with different devotees and others, even enemies, and this creates a pastime. So in this case, we have all the Vishnus, including Krsna and Balaram, going to Sonatapura because Aniruddha, grandson, had been captured. So it's their duty to give protection and to rescue him. So in this way, Krishna expresses his affection for Aniruddha, his grandson. Now previously it was also explained, well actually Aniruddha could not be defeated anyway by Banasura, but this was arrangement of the Leela Shakti for a certain purpose. So the Leela Shakti operates, and sometimes we see yogamaya operates to arrange this pastime, which creates bliss. It establishes different relationships between Krishna and Aniruddha. It establishes Krishna's relationship with others as well. And of course, when the devotees see Krishna protecting his own grandson and protecting devotees, they become inspired. And when the Yadus fight along with Krishna and Balaram, they become inspired. And particularly we find some variation in the rasa. So we have the positive rasas where Krishna has affection for his grandson and affection for the Yadus. And then we have a rasa with the enemy, which is, we can say, Rauda rasa and Virya rasa expressed, where he's angry at the enemies for capturing Aniruddha, and he begins to fight with Banasura and his associates. And this gives rise to the feeling of courage and bravery, etc. So even though it's an enemy, this becomes enjoyable for Supreme Lord. Of course, he can conquer anyone, but he gets pleasure in this display of valor against the different demons and fighting spirits. So this adds a little variety to his bliss. And of course, we'll find a great variety of rasas, secondary rasas expressed along with the primary rasas. And this creates a feeling of satisfaction for the Lord. And it also gives great satisfaction to the devotees to see how the Lord is powerful and he has a courageous spirit leading the battle against the enemy, etc. So it becomes inspiring for the devotees as well. So this creates a increase in the bliss. So pastimes are essential for the Supreme Lord. So we have some pastimes where there's no demons, like the Ras Leela, something like that, or the daily pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan. Particularly when Krishna is in the material world, we'll find pastimes related to killing demons. But it's not only killing demons. As I said, killing the demon is a secondary part of the pastime. So through that pastime we find relationships with the devotees, which increase through the killing of the demon. Or as in the case of Krishna defeating Indra during the Govardhana Leela. So that's one aspect, that he was able to defeat Indra by lifting up the hill, etc. But then he established stronger relationships of love with all the people of Vrindavan by holding up the mountain for 7 days and nights, in which they could constantly see Krishna. So the primary factor in all the pastimes is it gives pleasure to the devotees, and consequently the Lord himself gets great pleasure. So we have assistants here. So one of the assistants is Shiva. He's on the enemy side, but he's also an assistant in the Lord's pastime. So of course Krishna can fight against Banasura, but even more powerful is Lord Shiva. So if the Lord fights against Lord Shiva, that's even a greater display of skill and virya rasa, etc. In this way, Shiva is arranged by the Lord through yogamaya and Leela Shakti that Shiva fights on behalf of the enemy side. And in this way, Krishna gets great pleasure from the fight, using his great skill, etc., more than he would have pleasure in fighting with others. So, therefore, the Shiva is, for this reason, fighting on the opposite side. So, we never criticize the Lord because all of his qualities are wonderful, and whatever fault we see, it's not actually a fault. It's a good quality. So, of course, the demons can also find fault in Krishna, and we see they do, like Jarasandha or Shishupal, they always find fault in Krishna. So, the devotees, however, never see fault. And similarly, the devotees are advised never to see fault in the devotees of the Lord, or the devatas who are devotees of the Lord. So that's why we never criticize the devatas. That's considered to be one of the aparads, criticizing devatas, because they're devotees of the Supreme Lord. So sometimes they may act in a way which looks like not proper, as in this case, Lord Shiva fighting with the Supreme Lord himself. Or we see Indra fights with Krishna, and when Krishna takes the parijat flower. So then we will say, well, why? They must be very foolish because they are fighting against the Supreme Lord. But arrangement of the Supreme Lord. So we can't criticize Rudra in this case, or Shiva in this case, because of his participation in the battle. However, we do see that what happens with Lord Shiva here, he gave benedictions to Banasura, and Banasura turns out to be a big demon because he didn't recognize Aniruddha, and he fights against the Supreme Lord himself. So we find that Shiva often supports people who become demons, or he gives blessings to people who are demoniac, etc. So we can always question that also. Why would he do such a thing? But then we could say, well, even Brahma gives benediction to Hiranyakasipu. So we can find fault like this with all the devatas. But again, arrangement of the Supreme Lord is involved in this as well. And the devatas do have to respond to the worship given to them by even demons. So they have to give some response to them. And therefore they often give them certain benedictions. But as we see, these benedictions are nothing in comparison to the power of the Supreme Lord. So the Supreme Lord doesn't have to worry about these benedictions because he can overcome them in so many ways. The Lord Rudra gives benedictions to Banasura, etc. After the battle, we see that. Krishna had no animosity towards Lord Shiva, and even with Banasura, he didn't kill him. He just made him so he didn't have his 1,000 arms anymore. He only had 4 arms, and he accepted him as a servant of Lord Shiva. So the Lord has, in any case, no animosity towards anyone, and whatever took place in this battle, didn't affect the Lord to create any hatred for anyone. Rather, he made arrangements which showed his great compassion for everyone. So in this way, no criticism of the Supreme Lord on any point, and no criticism even of the devatas. In this way, the Lord carries out his pastimes. So don't blame them if the devatas sometimes become bewildered. So that's pointed out by Vishnu Chakravarti in relation to the devatas that says Rudra Adi, Brahma Rudra Adi Mohanam. The Lord has the power to bewilder even Rudra and Brahma. So it's not their fault. It's the deliberate will of the Lord that this happened, and it's for the Lord's increase of bliss for the devotees. Can? Do they always become demons? No, not necessarily. There's many people, Brahmins who worship Lord Shiva or whatever. They're not regular demons because it is said in Bhagavad Gita that actually people in sattva worship devatas in an authorized way. Now they may people in tamoguna, rajaguna may worship Shiva or any devata or other entities like ghosts, etc. But it's always not according to the scriptural rules. But if they follow worship of devatas according to scriptural rules, then they're considered to be in sattva. So they're not demoniac, in other words. But many demons do worship Shiva and other devatas because they think that they can get great benedictions and power from them.
You just mentioned about the Brahma Rudra. Brahma Rudra, Adi also refers to somebody higher than Brahma, not Rudra.
What's that?
Brahma Rudra, we just mentioned.
Yeah.
Adi refers to someone higher than Brahma Rudra.
No, obviously Shiva, among all the different powerful devatas, Shiva would be the most powerful because he's actually not, he's a Vishnu. Brahma is usually a jiva, but then he's the head of the universe, and all the other devatas like Indra and ever are usually jivas, so they're under Lord Brahma. So Adi would mean others as well who are less powerful. So Indra, for instance, get bewildered by Lord Krsna in order that Govardhan Leela takes place, or he fights with him for the Parijata flower.
We see that even Balaram is bewildered in that sense. Balaram is something higher than Shiva.
Oh yeah, well definitely, because the forms of the Lord, Vishnu, are higher than Lord Shiva, and of course Krsna is higher than other forms of the Lord. So in general, any form of the Lord could bewilder a Vishnu, or avatar forms could bewilder Shiva. But it's only Krsna who can bewilder Shiva and others, including balaram.
Did Banasura know about Krsna and Aniruddha's relationship with Krsna and what he's doing with them? Did we know at this point of time?
Doesn't mention, but obviously he didn't recognize him as Supreme Lord, because why would he imprison Aniruddha in that case?
the quality, every quality originates from Krishna. And here the fighting quality, we just see it as Krishna, he wants to fight. Then Shiva is that. Jiva should not misuse or misrepresent this aspect of the qualities in the Lord that we are being to see.
Well, the jivas in the material world, human beings, may have a fighting quality. Generally, they are called kshatriyas. And in the varnashram system, that quality is, we could say, controlled so that they use that against forces of adharma, etc., and to create discipline within society according to the laws of dharma. So that's the material aspect of it. Now, of course, Krishna and the devotees don't have any material rajas and whatever kshatriya nature. This nature is only there for pastimes in the spiritual world. or when they come to the material world for killing the demons. But it's actually not a material mixture of rajas and sattva as the kshatriya in the material world is. So in the material world, this quality is there. I was going to say a dull reflection within the gunas is the kshatriya quality to control and to fight, etc. So it is regulated through the laws governing the kshatriya, and they have to follow dharma. The devotee is doing sadhana, and then gradually he will develop spiritual qualities. At the moment he may have material qualities. So Rajagun or Tamagun or Sattvagun can manifest in devotees. That's not considered a good quality, but gradually with the influence of bhakti, those qualities will disappear. But they may manifest at certain times, so therefore devotees may show rajas and they may fight and quarrel and do whatever like that. So that's an aspect of the gunas. And we shouldn't confuse that and give a justification that because Krishna fights, that we can also fight like this.
How can this animosity become the rasa? Like when Krishna shows animosity to others, it becomes like Veera rasa or the Rudra rasa.
What's that?
When Krishna shows animosity to others, like it becomes rasa. Showing anger.
Yeah.
So how is it possible? Because in the material world, normally when it shows anger towards someone, it's not a rasa, when it's saying.
Well, in the spiritual world, what we call krodha rasa is actually, it's a secondary rasa. It does not exist unless the primary rasas are there. In the material world, it's not like that. You could have anger without having a primary rasa in the material world. So it's a little bit different. And it always disappears again. That's why it's called secondary rasa. So Krishna may show anger, or the devotee may show anger, the gopis show anger, but it disappears again very, very quickly. Of course, it is a little prolonged, and therefore it's called rasa. But if it's very, very short, then actually it's called vyabhachari bhava only. It's just a very slight feeling which acts counter to the main rasa, like a small wave in the ocean. Then it disappears again.
Like Krishna's showing animosity towards this Vanasu, but so he's showing this animosity for certain purpose. And after that,
Disappears. Yeah.
It disappears. He doesn't remember again.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, he never shows hatred towards anybody. In the material world, because of long-standing hatred, the anger will continue and continue and continue. With Krishna, no, it disappears, and then it's back to the primary rasas again. The secondary rasas merge back into the primary rasa, and then there's only feelings of love and affection again.
So it diverges into love and affection.
Yeah, disappears.
We understand that if when Lashmi becomes angry at Hiranyakashipu, it is out of his primary rasa towards Prabha.
Yeah.
Similarly, devotee becomes angry with the Lord also, like Jagannatha Pandit becomes and Chaitanya. It's only primarily love.
Yeah, out of love, anger and love, we can say in that case.
But you said that there is no hatred when devotee is offended, the Lord becomes upset with the devotee. So is that the hatred or you understand?
What is that? When?
Like Durvasa makes an offense to Ambarish.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not equal to Ambarish and Durvasa, where the relationship with Ambarish is out of love, and then you said that Lord does not hate anybody.
Yeah.
But there, what is this rasa with that Durvasa?
Towards what? Durvasa? Or whatever. Well, obviously he favors the devotee, as we see in that case. He said if you want to get forgiveness, then you go to Ambarish and ask for his forgiveness, and then you'll be free of that Sudarshan Chakra. So he gives Durvasa a means by which he can get rid of his pain or whatever like that. So even though he's upset with him, then he also is compassionate to him. and he gives him solution for his problem that he's created. So he doesn't show hatred as such, huh? But he may show temporary disturbance because of the problems that the demons cause.
Yeah.